Hey, how's it going everybody? Welcome back to another video on Gentry Gallery. Today we're going to be looking at this awesome new knife I got. In case you didn't know, this is a approximately 1970 production second model fat guard SOG knife. I was able to purchase this knife from a viewer of the channel, so big shout out to them. I'm not going to drop their name obviously, but huge shout out to them for contacting me after seeing my numbered SOG video and offering to sell me this knife. So now jumping right into it, let's take a look at this thing. Here it is, y'all. The second model Fat Guard SOG. I'm going to start off by going over the hallmarks of this design, going over the sheath, and then talking a little bit about the history of it. So let's hop right in. Starting off with the blade here, we have a typical SOG Bowie 6-inch blade. It's got that classic design that apparently was roughly based on a Marbles Skinner. Very beautiful blade. This one was blued at one point. You can still see some slight remnants of the bluing on the blade. Right now, in its current condition, it kind of has a cool gunmetal look almost, which I really like. My last SOG knife was a very consistent blue on the blade, but I actually do really like the look of this too. Next up, let's take a look at the guard. This is one of the biggest differences in the numbered and second model fat guard. The guard here you can see is kind of almost more of a oval shape, or a parabola, I guess you would say, with 2 points and then kind of rounded. A little bit stubbier and fatter than the numbered model, obviously. Also, just to note, you can see that there are no markings on the ricasso of this knife. There are actually no markings anywhere on this knife, as this is a true sterile SOG model. Next, let's take a look at the grip here. We can see brown stacked leather washers. They've been darkened from probably years of use. On my numbered SOG and on some of the SOGs you'll find, these will be dyed black. That was a common modification that was done. And you can see the grips here for your fingers, as well as this grind here on the guard itself. I don't really know what you call that grind, I'm going to call it. That allows you to pinch grip right here underneath the guard. Really good design. Finally, on the fittings, we have the pommel and the spacers in the blade. You'll notice the white plastic spacers on the top and bottom. This one's kind of hard to see because it's yellowed, and with this light is kind of mixing in with the pommel here, but there is a spacer there, I promise. The pommel, almost identical to the numbered SOG and most other SOGs you'll see. One-piece brass pommel with a lanyard loop hole there. And then it is held together with this retention bolt nut screw thing here at the bottom. This one has been ground down a little bit. It's pretty common to see these ground down. Sometimes if you get like a totally unmodified version, this nut or the bolt at the bottom of the tang will actually be sticking out a little further. So either way, that's what you want to see. Alright y'all, now we're going to take a look at this sheath. There are a few things to point out about this one, but I'm just going to start with a general overview of this. This is a first pattern SOG sheath. You can tell that by a few things. First is going to be this waisted belt loop area. This was done on the first, second, fourth, fifth, and sixth versions, I believe. The third version had a straight belt retention area right here, so something to look out there. The way to tell between the waisted sheaths, actually, most times, is the shape of these flaps and retaining straps. So you can see here, this one comes to a slight point, as well as this flap here. It's kind of hard to see, but there would have been a slight point right there. That's a hallmark of the first pattern sheath. So this is a first pattern sheath. That's the one that you'll find most commonly with all the main variations of the SOG knife. Alright, next let's take a look at the back. So there's a couple things to point out here. First are these modifications made. You can see two snaps added here and here. This probably would have been for some kind of way to directly affix the knife to your web gear or whatever it is, your load bearing gear. I'm going to assume. I haven't seen that before, but that is a really cool mod, and you can see down here there's a hole where a snap probably was but got pulled out, so they probably just replaced it right here. Really cool though. Here on the bottom of the sheath, it's probably hard for y'all to read. I'm going to try to get it in the light, but there are 3 or 4 lines of text. The first line reads DF McClellam. That's MCCLELLAM. DF McClellam. Underneath that, it reads Kretschmann. SCHMAN. Kretschmann. Underneath that, it reads USMC. And then over here, it reads Kretschmann again. So whoever Kretschmann was really wanted to let people know that this was his knife. I'm going to assume that he was in the Marines, probably with a recon team or something similar. It would be strange for him to have this knife unless he was doing something a little bit spooky or knew somebody that was doing that sort of stuff and was good enough friends with them to get this knife from him. So that's my current theory. If anybody knows of McClellan or Kretschmann, both probably in the USMC because I couldn't find those names on the SOG registry, let me know. I'd be very interested to find out. Now let's talk a little bit about the history of this knife. These were acquired by the Counterinsurgency Support Office sometime around 1970. They were produced in a number of approximately 1,000. They came in at 10.5 inches with a blued blade, typically, and a brown leather grip, brass fittings, as you see here, and white spacers. They differ a little bit from the first model in the blade shape. Most of the knife is sort of similar. The guard is a little bit different, but still fat, and the blade shape on the first model actually has a thinner ricasso. It kind of arches in this way, and looks a little bit more sculpted. I'll throw a photo up of the first model, and I believe the third model was the same way too, so that would tell me that maybe the manufacturers for the first and third models were the same because they used the same mold for their blade, which is a little different than the rest of the SOG knives, but that's simply just assumptions at this point. Well, alright y'all, that's all that really is to say about this knife. Really excited to be able to share it with you guys, and again, huge shout out to the viewer that sold it to me. Absolutely enthralled with this thing. It is beautiful, and I'm so happy to have another SOG knife in the collection. Really appreciate y'all. Have a good one.